The echo of machines filled the vast factory floor, where a haze of dust mingled with the smell of oil and metal. Max Turner, CEO of Turner Industries, walked quietly through the production lines. He wore an orange safety vest and a hard hat, blending in with the workers. It wasn't often that Max left his office to visit the factory floor. He was known for being practical and cold, but today something had driven him down here, rumors of growing discontent among the workers. As he moved further into the facility, something caught his attention. Sitting on a steel platform, a man in a blue uniform and yellow helmet had his face buried in his hands. His shoulders trembled slightly, giving away the fact that he was crying. Max paused for a moment, unsure of what to do. The other workers nearby averted their eyes, pretending not to notice the scene. The tension in the air was unmistakable. Max approached slowly. The man didn't hear him at first, lost in his thoughts. "Hey, are you all right?" Max's voice echoed through the metallic expanse. The worker lifted his head, revealing red, swollen eyes. It was Noah Briggs, one of the most experienced machine operators in the plant. He quickly tried to pull himself together, wiping his face with his sleeve. "Sorry, sir. It's been a rough day," Noah said, his voice cracking. "A rough day?" Max narrowed his eyes, sensing there was more to the story. "Sit down, Briggs. I want to hear what's going on." Noah hesitated but eventually sighed and sat down again. The firm but not unfriendly look on Max's face convinced him to speak. "I've been working here for over 15 years. Always done my best. But lately..." His voice broke. "My wife's sick. The medical bills are killing us. And yesterday, I missed my night shift because I had to take her to the hospital. Today, I got written up." Max felt an unexpected weight settle in his chest. Disciplinary write-ups for absences were standard company policy, but he had never stopped to think about the people behind those reports. "Why didn't anyone tell me about this before?" Max muttered, half to himself. Noah gave a bitter smile. "People here don't think management cares. To most of them, we're just replaceable parts." The silence that followed was deafening. Max couldn't look away from Noah's weary face. Something was about to change. He could feel it, though he wasn't yet sure how. Max stood slowly, his expression hardening with resolve. "Briggs, I can't promise to fix everything overnight, but you have my word. I'll do whatever it takes." What Noah didn't know was that this conversation would trigger changes that would shake the company to its core. Before we continue, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. This helps us bring more emotional stories to you. The factory floor buzzed with the usual noise of machinery, but an unusual tension hung in the air. Max Turner's unexpected visit had stirred curiosity and unease among the workers. Rumors spread quickly. Some said he had spoken with Noah Briggs, others speculated that changes were coming. For years, Max had been a distant figure to most of them, known only as the man behind the company's growth and relentless efficiency. Max stood in his office, watching the workers below through the large window. His mind replayed his conversation with Noah. He had always viewed performance reports as simple data, numbers, percentages, but now he couldn't ignore the human weight behind them. 15 years of loyalty, and a man like Noah was drowning in problems no one had noticed. Something had to change, and it had to start with him. Linda Peterson, the operations manager, entered his office after a brief knock. Clipboard in hand, she gave him a questioning look. Max wasted no time. "Tell me about Noah Briggs," he said. Linda frowned, flipping through her notes. "He's had some absences lately. We issued a warning yesterday. I didn't know it was because of his wife's illness." Max's eyes darkened as he replied, "And why didn't anyone ask? We're not managing robots, Linda. These are people with real lives." Linda's posture stiffened, but she nodded. Max continued, his voice more resolute. Effective immediately, I want a review of worker morale. Supervisors need to check in with their teams beyond performance metrics. And until further notice, any disciplinary actions related to absences are on hold. If someone's in trouble, I want to know why." Linda blinked, clearly taken aback by the shift in his approach, but she agreed to implement the changes. Later that day, Max entered the factory's break room for the first time in years. Conversations halted as dozens of workers stared at him in surprise. He addressed them calmly, but firmly. "I know things haven't been perfect here," he began. "I also know that many of you feel like your voices don't matter. That changes now. I want to hear your concerns. No filters, no middlemen." For a moment, the room was silent. Then, a young worker named Carlos spoke up, his tone laced with doubt. "We've heard promises before, Mr. Turner. Why should we believe this time's different?" Noah Briggs, sitting near the corner, rose and looked around the room. "Because he listened to me," Noah said quietly but with conviction. "Maybe we should give him a chance." The atmosphere softened as murmurs of agreement spread. Max met Noah's gaze and nodded, silently vowing to honor the trust placed in him. As he walked away, he knew the road ahead would be long, but a crucial first step had been taken. The following morning, Max arrived at the factory earlier than usual. The hum of the machines was only beginning to stir, and a few workers were just clocking in. He walked through the vast facility slowly, taking in details he had once overlooked: the worn faces, the sluggish movements of people tired before their day even began. It wasn't just Noah who was struggling. The weight of this reality hit him like a slow-moving storm. In the supervisor's office, Tony Harris, a veteran manager with over 20 years in the company, greeted Max with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Didn't expect to see you down here 2 days in a row," Tony said, adjusting his safety goggles. Max wasted no time. "How often do you check on your team's well-being, Tony?" The question caught Tony off guard. He scratched the back of his head. "Well, I check productivity reports. I make sure they hit their targets." "Isn't that what you've always wanted?" Max exhaled, shaking his head slowly. "It's not enough anymore. People are at their breaking point, Tony. I want you to start holding weekly one-on-one check-ins with your team. I need to know what's really going on out there." Tony crossed his arms, his face hardening. "With all due respect, Max, you were the one who drilled efficiency first into us. Now you want compassion overnight." Max met his gaze steadily. "Maybe I was wrong. But we're not going to get anywhere if we don't start listening." As Max walked away, Tony stayed behind, conflicted. He couldn't ignore the truth in Max's words. Over the years, they had all become slaves to quotas and deadlines, leaving little room for empathy. Yet, if the boss himself was willing to change, maybe it was time for the rest of them to reconsider their approach as well. Meanwhile, on the production line, the workers noticed subtle shifts in atmosphere. Supervisors like Tony began walking the floor more often, asking questions that weren't about performance. "Everything all right at home? How's your workload been?" These were questions no one had heard before. Though skeptical, many workers cautiously opened up. Stories of exhaustion, medical struggles, and financial stress surfaced, and for once, they didn't feel entirely invisible. By the end of the day, word had spread throughout the factory. Max Turner was no longer the distant CEO. He was involved. But for some, like Carlos, doubt still lingered. "Talk is cheap," he whispered to a co-worker. "Let's see how long this lasts." Little did Carlos know, the changes had only just begun, and they would soon test both Max and the entire workforce in unexpected ways. Just as the factory seemed to be settling into the new rhythm, a sudden disruption shook the fragile progress. Midway through the afternoon shift, a loud mechanical screech echoed across the production floor, followed by the abrupt shutdown of one of the main assembly lines. Sparks flew as workers scrambled to shut off nearby machines. Tony Harris rushed to the scene, barking orders for everyone to clear the area. Max, who had been reviewing reports in his office, arrived moments later. "What happened?" Max demanded, his voice sharp. Tony pointed to the massive conveyor belt, now seized up and motionless. "Looks like a failure in the primary motor. This line handles almost 40% of our daily output. If we don't get it running soon, we're going to miss several major deliveries." The weight of the situation settled heavily on Max. A missed deadline could cost them contracts they couldn't afford to lose. But he wasn't about to make the same mistake he had in the past, pushing his people to the brink without considering the consequences. "How long will repairs take?" Max asked, his tone firm but measured. Noah Briggs, who had overheard the conversation, stepped forward. "It depends on how bad the motor's damaged. I've worked on that line before. We might be able to bypass the system temporarily if we can redirect the load to the secondary line." Tony glanced at Max, then at Noah. "It's risky," Tony muttered, "but it could work." Max nodded decisively. "All right, let's try it. But no shortcuts. Safety comes first." The team quickly mobilized under Noah's guidance, working together with a precision that surprised even the supervisors. As hours passed, the tension eased slightly. Noah's expertise proved invaluable, and for the first time in years, Max saw his employees not just as cogs in a machine but as skilled, capable individuals holding the company together. By evening, the temporary fix was in place, and the assembly line was running again. Workers cheered quietly as the machines roared back to life. Max approached Noah and clapped him on the shoulder. "Good work, Briggs. You saved us today." Noah smiled faintly, exhaustion etched on his face. "Just doing my part." But as Max watched the workers begin their cleanup, he couldn't shake the feeling that another, deeper crisis was looming, one that no amount of mechanical expertise could fix. 2 weeks passed, and the changes Max had implemented slowly took root. Supervisors began holding regular check-ins with their teams, and though subtle, a shift was evident. There was still hesitation. Years of mistrust wouldn't vanish overnight, but some workers started to believe that perhaps things could improve. Max knew, however, that trust was delicate and could be shattered by a single misstep. That misstep came faster than he expected. Late one afternoon, a malfunction on the main assembly line caused a serious delay in production. Tony Harris immediately authorized overtime to compensate for lost time, but the response was mixed. Several workers, including Noah Briggs, refused to stay. "I can't stay late, Tony," Noah said, his voice firm but tired. "My wife has a hospital appointment." Tony relented, but other supervisors weren't as lenient. Carlos, one of the younger operators, was forced to stay despite explaining he had to pick up his younger sister from school. By the next morning, discontent spread across the factory floor. Workers murmured about double standards and broken promises. "So much for things getting better," Carlos muttered to a co-worker. Rumors of favoritism and poor treatment reignited old suspicions. Word eventually reached Max during his daily walkthrough, and he wasted no time finding Carlos at his station. "Can I have a word with you?" Max asked calmly. Carlos followed him to a quieter corner, his expression guarded. "I heard what happened yesterday," Max began. "You were forced to work overtime. That shouldn't have happened." Carlos crossed his arms and scoffed. "It's always the same story, Mr. Turner. You say you care, but when things get tight, we're just numbers again." Max paused, acknowledging the truth in Carlos's words. "You're not wrong," he said slowly. "But I'm asking for your help to change that. I can't fix everything overnight, and I can't be everywhere. I need people like you to call out these problems when they happen. Together, we can make sure no one else goes through this." Carlos studied him silently, then nodded cautiously. "All right. But you've got one last chance with a lot of us." That evening, Max drafted a new memo, instructing supervisors to prioritize workers' needs even during production crises. Words alone wouldn't be enough. He knew he'd have to prove these changes were real. The next challenge would determine if his efforts would truly take hold or crumble under pressure. This story shows how unexpected challenges and mistakes can impact a team and trust. What do you think about Max and Tony's decisions? Did they handle things correctly, or could they have done something different? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. The factory ran smoothly over the following days, but under the surface, tensions remained. Workers whispered about Carlos's ordeal, and while some appreciated Max's efforts, others remained skeptical. Noah Briggs, meanwhile, found himself at a crossroads. His wife's health continued to worsen, and the financial strain was growing unbearable. Despite Max's new policies, Noah felt torn between loyalty to his job and the urgent need to care for his family. Late one evening, Noah sat in the hospital waiting room, his mind racing. His wife, Emily, was undergoing another round of tests, and he feared what the doctors might say next. His phone buzzed with a message from Tony Harris. "Hey, we need you early tomorrow to help troubleshoot the line again," the text read. Noah sighed, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like never before. He couldn't afford to lose his job, but how much more could he endure? The next morning, Noah arrived at the factory exhausted but determined. Max noticed him almost immediately. The dark circles under Noah's eyes and the slump in his shoulders spoke volumes. "Noah, can we talk for a minute?" Max asked, pulling him aside. Noah hesitated but followed him to a quiet area. "I can see you're under a lot of stress," Max said gently. "I need to know what's really going on." For a moment, Noah debated whether to open up. Finally, he exhaled and said, "It's my wife. Her treatments are expensive, and I'm barely keeping us afloat. Every day feels like a choice between being here and being there for her." Max listened intently, understanding now just how deep the struggle ran. "You've given this company 15 years, Max said after a pause. "We need to do better for you. Let me see what I can do to support you. Flexibility, extra leave, whatever you need." The offer caught Noah off guard. "You'd really do that?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Max nodded. "This isn't just about keeping the machines running anymore. If we don't take care of our people, we've already lost." By the end of the conversation, something shifted inside Noah. He wasn't ready to fully trust yet, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope that things might change, not just for him, but for everyone. As he returned to his station, whispers spread across the factory. People were watching closely to see if Max's promises would hold, and whether the sacrifices they had made for years would finally be acknowledged. The pressure to maintain output increased as the factory approached a crucial deadline for a major client. Supervisors, despite Max's new directives, felt torn between following his orders to prioritize workers' well-being and meeting production targets. Some began quietly reverting to old habits, pushing teams harder without much regard for their circumstances. Word spread quickly that overtime demands were on the rise again, reigniting the workers' frustrations. Carlos was one of the first to speak out. During a team meeting, he raised his hand and asked bluntly, "So, which is it, deadlines or us? Because it sure feels like nothing's really changed." Tony Harris shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Max, who was observing from the back of the room. Tony hesitated before responding. "We're trying to balance both. I understand it's not perfect, but we're doing the best we can." Max stepped forward, addressing the room. "I hear you, Carlos. We said things would change, and I mean to keep that promise. We're going to prioritize finding smarter ways to work rather than just asking for more hours." His tone was firm, but he could feel the tension hanging in the air. "I need everyone, workers and supervisors alike, to come to me directly if they see these issues happening. We can't solve this overnight, but I won't let us slide back into the old ways." After the meeting, Tony pulled Max aside. "You realize what you're up against, right? Deadlines don't wait. The clients don't care about internal policies. If we fall short, heads are going to roll, starting with yours." Max's jaw tightened, but he met Tony's gaze without flinching. "If that's the price for doing what's right, so be it. We'll find a way, Tony." Meanwhile, Noah Briggs watched the situation unfold from a distance. He could see both sides of the argument. Max was trying, but the weight of years of broken trust still hung over everyone. In the break room, a few workers voiced their doubts. "He's just covering his ass," one said. "Let's see how long it takes for him to cave." Noah shook his head quietly. "You don't change things by giving up at the first setback," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. By the end of the day, the factory felt like a battlefield where unseen lines had been drawn. The workers were watching Max more closely than ever. Would he hold firm, or would the pressures of the business force him to backtrack? Everyone knew the answer would come sooner rather than later. As the deadline for the client's order loomed closer, the strain on the factory intensified. Machines roared through double shifts, and the supervisors grew tense with each passing hour. Max Turner spent most of his time on the floor, personally monitoring the operations. He could feel the growing anxiety around him. People were pushing harder than ever, despite his efforts to maintain balance. During a mid-morning inspection, Linda Peterson approached Max with a grim expression. "We're behind schedule," she said flatly. "If we don't catch up by tomorrow, we risk missing the delivery entirely." Tony's suggesting another round of mandatory overtime. Max shook his head. "No. We've been down that road before, and I won't let it happen again. We need an alternative plan." Linda sighed, frustrated. "Max, I get it. You want to do right by the workers. But you're also responsible for the survival of this company. If we lose this contract, we could face layoffs. That's not exactly helping anyone." Her words hit hard, but Max remained resolute. "We'll find another way," he said quietly. "Call a meeting with the leads. Let's strategize." Later that afternoon, Max gathered the factory's team leaders in a makeshift meeting room near the production floor. They discussed reallocating resources, improving task efficiency, and even pulling support from other departments. Noah Briggs, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "If we can reorganize the maintenance schedule and focus on the critical tasks, we might cut downtime in half." His suggestion sparked further discussion, and soon the group had a solid plan to improve productivity without demanding overtime. By evening, the workers sensed the shift. Supervisors began implementing the new strategy immediately, spreading the workload more evenly and allowing for shorter shifts on key tasks. For the first time in days, there was a feeling of cautious optimism. Noah, exhausted but relieved, wiped his brow and shared a rare smile with Carlos. "Looks like they're finally learning to trust us to get the job done," he said. However, Max knew that the pressure wasn't over. One misstep could still unravel everything. As he left the factory that night, his thoughts were heavy. The next 24 hours would be critical, and success or failure would define not just the company's future, but also his standing with the people he was fighting to protect. The final day before the delivery deadline arrived with an air of nervous anticipation. Workers moved quickly but cautiously, knowing that any mistake could delay production and undo the progress they had made. Max Turner was everywhere at once, checking on machines, speaking with supervisors, and offering words of encouragement to the teams. Despite the tension, there was a growing sense of determination among the staff. Just before lunch, disaster nearly struck. One of the smaller assembly lines stalled unexpectedly, sending a ripple of concern through the floor. Tony Harris was the first to reach the scene. "What's going on?" he barked at the technicians. A younger mechanic stammered nervously, "It's the conveyor sensor. Faulty readings are causing the whole system to jam." Tony was about to snap when Max intervened. "Let's stay calm. Can you bypass the sensor temporarily? The technicians nodded quickly and got to work. Within half an hour, the line was operational again, but the incident had rattled everyone. Max noticed the tension in Tony's face as they walked back to the supervisor's office. "You were ready to lose it out there," Max said calmly. Tony sighed heavily. "Old habits die hard, Max. I've been running on deadlines my whole life. Sometimes it feels like no matter what we do, something's always waiting to go wrong." Max nodded thoughtfully. "I get it. But today, we didn't push anyone to the brink. We worked the problem and kept moving. That's how we build trust, one moment at a time." Tony didn't respond immediately, but something in his posture relaxed. As the hours passed, the pace of work intensified. Carlos and Noah led their teams with quiet efficiency, each mindful of the stakes. By late afternoon, the last batch of products rolled off the line. The team erupted in quiet cheers, knowing they had achieved what once seemed impossible without resorting to brutal overtime schedules. Workers exchanged high fives and exhausted smiles. Max stood near the control booth, taking in the scene. For the first time, he felt a sense of real accomplishment, not just from meeting the deadline, but from earning the trust of the people around him. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The fight to maintain this progress would continue long after the client's order was shipped. The morning after the shipment was successfully sent off, the factory was unusually quiet. Most of the workers were taking a well-deserved day off, but a handful remained to perform maintenance and clean up. Max Turner arrived early, walking the production floor with a sense of relief and pride. They had pulled through without compromising the workers' well-being, something that had once seemed impossible. In the break room, Max found Noah, Briggs, and Carlos sharing a cup of coffee. Noah looked up and nodded respectfully. "We did it," he said simply. Carlos, more relaxed than Max had ever seen him, added, "Yeah, I didn't think we could get it done without being run into the ground, but it's different now." "It feels different." Max sat down with them, something he wouldn't have done just weeks ago. "I meant what I said. This isn't going to be a one-time thing. I want this place to be somewhere people want to work, not just a job they have to survive." Carlos raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Noah smiled faintly. "You've got a long road ahead, but I think most of us are willing to give you that chance now." Later that morning, Max met with Linda and Tony to review the results of the past few weeks. "We made the deadline without burning people out." "That's a huge win," Linda said. Tony, though still cautious, agreed. "The crew's morale is better than I've seen in years. If we can keep this up, who knows how far we can take it." Max listened silently, then said, "We will keep this up. We've proven that productivity and compassion aren't mutually exclusive." As the day wound down, Max stood by the large office window, watching a few workers finish their tasks on the floor below. He reflected on how much had changed, not just in the factory, but within himself. The version of Max from a month ago wouldn't have cared about the people behind the numbers. Now, he understood that success wasn't just measured in deadlines met or profits earned. It was in trust, respect, and the well-being of the people who kept the company alive. The factory wasn't perfect, and challenges would continue to arise. But for the first time in years, Max felt ready to face them head-on, with the support of those around him. The foundation of Turner Industries had shifted, and this time, it was built on something stronger than fear: hope. If you made it this far, it means this story really captivated you, right? If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to leave a like to support the channel. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any of the emotional stories we have coming your way. See you in the next video.